if you think, would I say the same thing that I'm going to say right now to my son if it was my daughter? Would I say the same thing? Would I react the same way? And so I think that's first, is the awareness. And then I think it's about knowledge. And I think you have to learn things. You can read books, you can take courses, you can join groups, but you have to become aware of what some of those differences are. And then once you are aware, then you can really start tapping into, okay, this is how I can make a deeper connection with my son. This is how I can communicate better. Simple things like if we understand, for example, the emotion of shame. Shame is an emotion that seems to, for little girls, they feel shame too and can get over it. For little boys, it is devastating. It's the worst emotion that a little boy can have. And if we're not aware of that, then, like when the teacher is scolding the boy in front of the class, or a little further on in elementary when the little boy gets put outside the classroom, you can do your work out here until, you can manage to control yourself and sit with the rest of the class. That kind of shame is just devastating for a little boy. So if we're aware of it, once you're aware of those things, once you've gotten the knowledge about it, then you're kinder, you're more empathetic. And so when you have a big thing with your son, you're not going to be talking to him about it in front of all of his peers.
Welcome to Soulmates and Suitcases. My name is Lisa Brierley, and beside me is my co-host Scott Brierley. And our podcast, if you haven't visited us before, it's a space where we have open and honest, raw conversations about healing, resilience, relationships, mental health, and of course, all those journeys that shape us. And today we do have a special guest with us today. We're excited to have Kathryne Imabayashi. Welcome, Kathryne.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're really excited for our topic today. And for those who are listening, today our special guest, Kathryne Imabayashi. She's an educator, a parenting coach, a speaker, an author, and the founder of Sonhood Coaching. And for those parents out there as well who have boys, who are raising boys, this will be a really, really important topic. With more than 40 years, Kathryne has, more than 40 years of experience in education across multiple countries. Kathryne has dedicated her career to helping parents and educators better understand boys and support their emotional, social, and developmental well-being. And she is the author of the book, Raising Boys Who Become Remarkable Men. And I love the subtitle, Intentionally Parenting Your Son, Birth to 8. And so we'll talk about that. So welcome, Kathryne. We're excited to have you on. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself so we can get started.
Well, like you said, I'm living in Japan. I left Canada when I was 30, and I basically have just kept traveling since then. And what got me started on this road, as far as boys goes, didn't happen until, well, it was about 30 years ago. So I guess it is quite a long time at this point. But my career has been in education, and most of it has been early years and early elementary. And my interest, even before I started to learn more, has definitely been with boys. I grew up in a heavily populated female home, and so I know a lot about women and girls. And growing up in the 60s and 70s, like I really did a lot of self-help and expansion with women's liberation, and that was my whole world. So when I started to get into this field, it was really interesting, and it was sparked by my son, by having a son. And so I started in Japan, here for 19 years, worked in the international school, and started my own international preschool for 6 years. And when my son had finished elementary, we decided to leave Japan, and we went to Beirut, to Lebanon, and we stayed there for his middle school and high school. He graduated from high school and went back to Canada, and I tend not to do anything small, and so I knew I had to find a way to deal with the empty nest because he was leaving a big hole in our world. And so I decided to move out of the classroom and went into leadership roles and started going to a few different countries. So first we went to Bangkok, and I worked in a Reggio Emilia influenced school for 2 years in their coordinating the toddler and 3-year-old programs. From that, we went to Tbilisi, Georgia, and I worked as the elementary principal, but truly what they had hired me for was to raise the level of the early years program. We stayed there for a year, and then I went to Doha, and in Qatar, the reason I was hired was to start up and found an international preschool that was based on Reggio Emilia. I did that for a year, and then we came back to Japan and spent 3 years in Tokyo. I was the director of international preschool, and then 2 years in Hiroshima as the elementary vice principal. And then I retired, and we came back to actually where I had started when I was 30 years old. And I wasn't sure what retirement would look like. It doesn't look the same for everybody, and especially being an international teacher, it's not like you have a retirement fund at the end of it. So I knew I had to do something, and for a brief moment, I thought about an easy route, like trying to, maybe just teach a few English classes and, drink Mai Tais, in between, and that didn't last very long, that thought. And so I decided to put all my energy to continue on with trying to share what I know, trying to advocate even harder for the emotional world of little boys and the world that boys and men are growing up in today. So that's been almost 6 years now. My son has been instrumental helping me set up business. I know education, but I really don't know business. And I've learned a great deal in these 6 years. But I have to have a website, have lots of online courses, do private coaching, do some talks in schools or community centers. Wrote the first parenting book, have another parenting, not just parenting, but parenting book coming out hopefully this summer. And that one, it's called How Boys Become Men. And that was, I started a podcast as well. And from last year, I decided to only speak to, for one season, to only speak to men and dads. And I didn't get too far into that before. It was like, these stories, there has to be another way to share them even more widely and to connect those stories with how we're raising our boys today. And so I chose 10 of the stories from men I'd interviewed, and I'm in the final processes of completing that book. So in a nutshell, that's where I am.
Amazing, nice. Amazing. And I keep thinking about, you were born in Canada and then you explored all these different societies across the world. Did you see a difference in how boys were being raised just in that sort of scope?
Well, there definitely are differences in the cultures, but I really think there are far more similarities than there are differences. And a lot of the differences come down to parenting styles rather than the cultures. And having my educational career has always been, except for the very first 2 years, it's always been in international schools. So in general, it was a melting pot of cultures, on a regular, everyday basis.
Okay, yeah. So understanding there's kind of that the thread that goes through all of it. So that's what brought to your attention. In your title, it says raising boys who become remarkable men. And so I really want to explore what this means, remarkable men. So kind of thinking that long-term goal. So what is it maybe that has been missing in our world with how men are showing up currently, and where we want to go to with them?
I think there is a true lack of understanding about the differences between males and females. So I think until we understand what those differences are and what the challenges are and how things have changed over time, then we are not able, I don't think, to really raise our boys so that they can be the best that they can be. That's what I think. That's the first thing, is we are not aware enough. I know for myself, one of the biggest ahas in my life was when I finally truly understood that not everybody in the world thinks the same as I do, especially men. And once I understood that, my husband does not think the same way I do, and so I shouldn't expect him to communicate the same way I do, to have the same thought process, that the differences between us need to be recognized and respected. And when they're not, if I'm putting all of my things on and expecting him to respond, expecting him to be able to deal with conflict the minute it happens, rather than respecting a different pace or style, then I'm setting us up for failure. But I'm also negating what his authentic self is. And I think that's what happens with a lot of young boys. They learn not to be themselves.
Yes, and specifically, how did your focus on boys come to be and not children per se? Like, what was it that was kind of sparking you about boys?
So I write about it as my fishing story, but it truly is the reason that this all began. When my son was somewhere between 3 and 4 in the summer on a Saturday, a beautiful day, and I had the summer off, and his dad was working, and he wanted to go fishing. And so, which meant, a little plastic fishing rod with, no real live bait on it, no hooks. But so we went to this little creek that was a little bit off the road, but, I'm living in Japan. I feel safer than most people in the world maybe do. So I did not even think about anything connected with safety. The spot that we went to was a little bit off the road, but it wasn't miles in. So we were down there. We were having a really nice, mother-son kind of morning. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see what I labeled in my mind a gang coming down this tree-lined path. And my automatic response was total fear. I was filled with fear, and the whole mama bear thing of, how am I going to protect my son from this gang? It was an overwhelming feeling. It was only a few seconds, but it was intense. So this gang comes a little bit closer, and it doesn't take long to recognize that they are probably 12, maybe 13 years old. It just happened that, at that year in my career, I had taught grade 5. And I know that summer in between grade 5 and 6, their bodies grow like crazy, but inside they're still, very much young boys. So I had no reason to be fearful. And we ended up spending a few hours together, had a wonderful time. My son had a wonderful time. They were wonderful boys. And that could have been the end of it, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. But when I went home that night, I tried to, I'm very analytical, and I have to understand things. You know, even if it's to understand, there is no way I can understand. And so I tried to figure out why I reacted that way, because it was very strong. I couldn't understand why I did, because I had no history. I had never been in a situation where something had happened or had been heard, or there was no logical reason for my reaction. And I was just about to let it go and give up, which is very unusual for me, but I could not come up with an answer. And then I had an image, and it was, okay, my little boy in 10 years, is he going to be walking down, the path to go fishing with his buddies, who are all nice kids, and some other mom is going to be filled with fear? Or when he's, 10 years older, 15 years older, 20 years older, are women going to be, cross the street if he's on one side because they're afraid? And the reason that they're afraid is simply because he's a boy, he's male. Has nothing to do with what he is saying, what he is doing, what he is wearing. And that just broke my heart. I thought, something is really wrong with this picture if this is the way we are. And that's what I did. Like, that's how I reacted. And so that was it. I decided, okay, this is my next challenge. I'm going to find out why that is the situation of society, and then what can I do to help make it better for my son, and then eventually for all little boys.
I love that. But in many ways, that's how I felt when I met Scott as well. So it's interesting you talk about the kind of the time of little boys, or that's the awareness. Because when Scott and I met, we met at a personal development class where it was like my little girl and that little boy was meeting each other. Like, it was one of those understandings. But for Scott, I felt like a lot of people would look at him as well and was very misunderstood. So, covered with tattoos, muscular man, deep voice, knew what he wanted, so came across as, gruff or whatever you want to call it. And until you came to that point of getting, like you did with the fishing, getting to know that gang, getting to know that party of people, only then did some breakdown happen. And I totally feel I'm very aligned with what you're saying, and how your brain just totally is on fire in regards to, I want to know, and I want to know the answer, and I want to inquire and ask more questions. So,
well, it's like when you talked about not understanding people or your husband, how he thinks. I go to 12-step meetings and I go to different meetings, and I don't get how most of the people in this world think, because it's so, I'm going to use the word like ass backwards, that it's like we want to coddle people so bad and not let them live their lives. Where like here in Thailand, like in Canada, for example, if you had a family of 4 on a scooter, everybody would be up in arms, and they'd be calling children's aid because there's a kid on a scooter. And it's like, to me, that's taking the kid's confidence away. And I think that kind of fits in where you say, I can't remember how you word it, but from the birth to 8, you kind of stay on them. And now, is that stay on them, or is that kind of let them be who they are and let them raise up to be the person
taking risks,
and not even just risks, but let them develop the way they need to develop, rather than handpack them. Because like, I know for myself, by the time I was in grade 6, you would have been better off to take me out of school and let me go work for my dad all the time.
I think it's a little more complicated than, just like being strict or, having free range kids. Like, I think it's for boys. I'm speaking specifically about boys. And I think what happens is that from a very young age, so the book is trying to help parents understand what's going on in that little boy's head. What are the stories that society is telling him about how he should behave? And being aware of when that little boy starts putting on masks to create a safe space so that he doesn't have to keep adding on to that, barrier between who he really is and what society is telling him he should be. Because if that happens, that's usually when you have your 16-year-old or or even younger than that, who has put up so many masks that they can't even get back and really tap into who is that real, little boy inside who's never been allowed to, people aren't okay when he is showing his real feelings. So that was the other thing with the podcast too, because like I had spent almost 30 years reading, learning everything I could. And in the beginning, there wasn't nearly as much information as there is now. But I had that background with me. I've also, been part of raising he doesn't like me saying it, but a remarkable young man. And it's not something that I take full credit for, but it's been intentional parenting and trying to help him understand that he can be who he wants. But this is what's happening in society. This is, and I'm trying to think where exactly I was going with this. I get on a rant and then I lose it.
We do too.
But it's, if a boy understands, so the consistent thing, I was going to the podcast, what I've really learned, I had all that background information, and then I started to really, take a deep dive into conversations with not just my son and his friends, but with a wide range of men. And that's what really, it's like they all have, different stories, but there is such a range of, nobody has said, I was able to grow up expressing myself fully in any way I wanted to. The most consistent area of angst in all of them, without fail, was their education. And without fail. And like even my son, and he said, and he had a good education, I think it was a high level of education, but the educational system doesn't really cater to how a boy learns. And so a little boy from the youngest of years is set up for failure in education. He doesn't fit it. He can't sit there for that 10-minute circle. He can't keep his hands to himself. His body is always moving all over the place. You asked an adult or, a kid in high school, what's been your favorite part of your school life? PE and recess.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's, that can harden a child's heart. But if any of the boys that I had connection with, like I can easily say, because I'm on the inside, and it's like, listen, this is not about you. You're in a class. I would tell my son, you're in a class, you're in a system, you're in an environment that really hasn't evolved. Society hasn't evolved. No. It does not cater to all the ways of learning. And on top of that, you are placed in classrooms based on age. And anybody who looks at, say, a 13-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy, there is no comparison in their maturity, in their developmental, stages. And so all the way through, these little guys are constantly being reinforced they're not good enough. And it sets them up for failure.
Oh, I've witnessed that firsthand as well, because I've been a kindergarten teacher and grade 1, 2 teacher
Oh,
for
okay.
almost 20 years, so I exactly know what you're speaking of.
Yeah.
Here's a quick pause in the conversation to invite you to join our Facebook community, Soulmates and Suitcases podcast. Tell your story, amplify your voice, where we share upcoming guests, new episodes, and conversations from the podcast. And you can catch all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now back to the show.
Grade 9 and they moved, and I was an absolute massive failure in school. Not just in grades, but it's like by the time I was in grade 6, I was expelled. Then they put me in this special school where the closest people to my age were 16 and 18 years old. And then they transferred to grade 9. So I went from 6 to grade 9 and then did a semester and did grade 10 in the following spring. And it's just like, and I wonder, it's only been as of recent that all that settled. And it's like, no wonder why I don't feel like I fit into society. I've moved around so much and everything's been so different all my life that it's like to step foot in is fear because it's never really worked.
There's the first book that I really got into when I started this in 96, I think, 1996, 1997. And it was Dr. William Pollack. It was called Real Boys. And he was the first person that I had heard the term the boy code. And he said that there are 3 myths about boys that society perpetuates. And boys will be boys, boys should be boys, and boys are toxic. And so boys will be boys, that's, the aggression that comes with the testosterone. Boys should be boys, that's where you don't show any, vulnerability. Anger is okay, but that's about it. And then boys are toxic, they're a danger to society. But those are myths. But that's the message that boys get from a very young age. If when you start getting really curious and you start looking at things like, what's going on in the media? What are the songs that are being, that kids are singing, but you listen to the words and it's like, how can you grow up in a society that is always saying these negative things? Now today in this generation, it's like almost men are useless, kind of like, we women, we don't need men. It's like an updated but fully horrible version of the 60s and the beginning of the feminist movement. But it's gone to such a negative hatred. And so then you've got all these changes in society where gaps have come as far as, where do boys fit in? Like, how are they supposed to be? Like, everything has changed. So they are a lost generation at the moment in general. Yeah. But because people don't recognize, first of all, that there are the differences, and then that there are biases. Like one of the most interesting experiments that I had watched, and so then I've taken it and pulled it into a few of my workshops, but just brilliant for helping people understand it. You have people, and there are 5 questions that are listed, and then you show a picture of a toddler, like the no-hair toddler, so you can't tell from the hair. And one of the portraits is of a toddler who is dressed in typical little girl clothes. And you ask the people, okay, write down what you think is a possible name, possibly what her character is like, what her hobbies might be, what her future career might be. And they do all that. And then you pull up a second photograph or a portrait, and it's another toddler dressed in typical little boy stuff. He's got his cap around the back. He's got the overalls on. And you say the same thing, the name, the character, the hobbies, possible future. And then when that's done, you put the two pictures together and you say to the people who wrote their answers down, you say, well, now look at your answers and know that this is the same child. And people, it's kind of, they shake their head. It's kind of like, I didn't think I had any biases. And then, but from, like the little girl was sweet and warm and probably was going to be a teacher or a nurse and very, warm and fluffy. And the little boy, with the backwards cap on was going to be a handful. He might end up being incarcerated, probably going to be a truck driver or something. And it was kind of just because you thought it was a girl or a boy. So that's why it makes it really difficult, because when you don't recognize that, you are reacting to how you think that person should behave.
Yep. Yep.
So are you, so are you kind of saying that we need to go back to men dressing more masculine and
Not
women
at all.
dressing more feminine? Okay.
Oh, no, not at all. I think if this was a perfect humanity, that we would have men and women on a spectrum, which they all are anyway. But instead of this divide, we would understand each other. We would understand what our challenges are and what our gifts are, and we would work respectfully together. Like, it's not, to me, that's a very simple method for humanity to go with. But until you have an understanding what our differences, like together, we can be a really strong unit.
Yeah. What?
Strong unit.
Oh, yes. Oh, I thought you were pointing just to me.
I was.
So like taking the judgment out, taking the ego out, and literally coming to a place of communication where we respect and understand the other person's needs, or to be heard or to be seen, and let them grow up that way.
Yes. Sometimes a parent will, come and they'll say, their biggest challenge at the moment, they've got a, 5, 6, 7-year-old, and he just won't listen. They don't listen. And so I share an example of a mom, and the little guy has come home from school. He goes up to his room. He's playing with his Lego. He's been working on this Lego fort for weeks. He is so happy to be back in his room doing his thing. His mom is downstairs. She's preparing for supper. Everything is going smoothly until it's almost time, and she's very aware to give advance notice. So 5 minutes before, she calls up the stairs and said, "Honey, 5 minutes, it'll be time to come down." 5 minutes finishes. She's in the process. She's setting the table or whatever, but she calls up and she says, "Come on down, dinner's ready." And she continues on with the things she's doing, preparing. He still hasn't come down. So she's just about finished what she's doing, but she calls up one more time, a little bit louder. And she says, "Come down now, dinner's ready." And then she goes back to what she's doing. Well, she gets everything finished a minute or two later. He's still not there, and she is not happy. And so she kind of stomps up the stairs. She puts her hands on her hips. She's in the doorway, and she goes off and she says, "Look, if you can't come down when I call you for dinner and I've got to come up here to talk to you, then maybe you shouldn't be playing with Lego at the end of the day." The little guy looks up at her like a deer in the headlights and doesn't know what's going on. What is going on, first of all, is he didn't hear her. So there are some, especially in the younger years, some hearing differences. More than that, in general, everything is on a spectrum, but in general, boys' focus men are just excellent at single focus, excellent. And when they're into something, they're fully in it. Whereas a woman can be doing the dishes, the meals, planning for, her meeting at work. She can multitask quite well. So this little guy is upstairs. He is fully focused. There is no outside interference at all in his world. He is in his Lego world. He has not heard a word his mom has said. So if his mom realized there could be difference in hearing, depending on the stage he's at. Plus, he just might not be able to take his focus away from what he's doing to be able to tune into what I'm saying. So she recognized that. And when it was time, she walked up those stairs, put a hand on his shoulder, waited until, he connected and said, "Dinner's ready, come on down." And everything would have been fine. So that lack of understanding just makes so many problems for everybody.
I think I've heard that sort of story over and over. I've heard that several times. And what your story, though, also reminds me that it's the work we do on ourselves, or looking at ourselves as someone who can, be more aware. So that is, to me, the first thing to do, to stop and be more aware that there are other perspectives than your own, or other learning styles than your own, or other ways of listening than your own. And I think that can be challenging for many people, especially like when we go back to North America, we feel the stress. The stress is there all the time. So it's the reminder that who are you in control of? You're in control of yourself. So that's all you can be technically in control of. So it's when you tell that story, what then is the sort of advice or understanding to give to parents in any of those situations? Like, is there kind of a standard sort of easier protocol to do?
If, without knowing anything about gender differences, if that mom, when she went to the doorway, if instead of assuming that he was defying her and being disrespectful, if she simply asked, "Did you hear me?"
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And when he says no,
Yeah.
that's a game changer. Just asking, "Did you hear me?" I still do that with my husband. "Did you hear what I said?" And not in that way, like not sarcastic, but truly, because if you didn't, then, I will try to speak more clearly, or.
Yeah.
We kind of had that this morning. My hearing's a little bit bad from working construction most of my life. And I'm making coffee behind me. So my back's turned to Lisa and her back's turned to me. And she's wanting to talk to me. And I'm like, every time she says something, I got to go, what? Pardon? And it's like, I'm focused on making coffee. And I'm also getting agitated because she's talking, not that she's talking to me, but that I cannot hear her properly. And I got to go, what? And it's like.
Yeah.
So that situation, it's also being able to teach the child, because at this point, if Scott's the adult, can now communicate that he needs to have me facing him, or he needs to be facing me, or whatever the situation is. So how do you teach? Because you talk about intentionally parenting from birth to 8. So what does that look like for parents who, have kids, have boys who are that age, and they really want to instill some of those great ways of them being able to show up, and the boys can feel more authentic?
So the first thing is the awareness, like being aware of what your unconscious gender biases are. And whenever I use that phrase, people roll their eyes, but it's real. Like it's a real thing. And that's the kind of the door that has to open almost before anything else. Because until you realize, then you don't stop yourself. Like if if you think, would I say the same thing that I'm going to say right now to my son if it was my daughter? Would I say the same thing? Would I react the same way? And so I think that's first, is the awareness. And then I think it's about knowledge. And I think you have to learn things. You know, you can read books, you can take courses, you can join groups, but you have to become aware of what some of those differences are. And then once you are aware, then you can really start tapping into, okay, this is how I can make a deeper connection with my son. This is how I can communicate better. Simple things like if we understand, for example, the emotion of shame. Shame is an emotion that seems to, for little girls, they feel shame too and can get over it. For little boys, it is devastating. It's the worst emotion that a little boy can have. And if we're not aware of that, then, you know, like when the teacher is scolding the boy in front of the class, or a little further on in elementary, when the little boy gets put outside the classroom, you can do your work out here until, you can manage to control yourself and sit with the rest of the class. That kind of shame is just devastating for a little boy. So if we're aware of it, once you're aware of those things, once you've gotten the knowledge about it, then you're kinder, you're more empathetic. And so when you have a big thing with your son, you're not going to be talking to him about it in front of all of his peers. You're going to say, we'll talk about that tonight, or, come on over here for a minute so I can share something with you. It's just, respectful communication.
Yeah.
And then, so it's the awareness, the knowledge, and then it's taking some kind of an action. So how I really got started after the fishing trip is reading that book by Dr. Pollock. And at the end of the book, he said, if you got anything from this, I'm paraphrasing, but if you got anything from this, now it's your job, it's your responsibility to share this with as many people as you can to help the, inner emotional world of little boys. So I took that very seriously. And I think that's it. You become aware, you learn everything you can, and then you need to take action, whether it's, talking to your son's teachers or, helping him understand better the way the world is trying to shape him. And
Yeah.
Do you think more people starting a path like this would help create not a line, but more of a masculinity in the world because we seem to be going the opposite direction. And I believe the world needs a balance of femininity and masculinity. And that's not saying that a man has to be masculine, because he can be feminine at times as well. Mm-hmm. However, a balance of both in each. Do you believe that if we started practicing this more in our lives, that would happen?
I think it like maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, but it almost feels like peg holing. And, like I see a movement more so I haven't seen it as much in Canada, but definitely see it in the States, where there is a movement to get back to the basics, to go back to the man is the man, back to the 50s role of the woman, like some really kind of, for me, it's out there, but it's really pigeonholing again, what people's roles are.
Yeah,
and so is that what you meant? Yeah,
but to me, that's not what true masculinity is.
But that's the problem. But that's what the problem is. What is it? Like, well, for you, it might be something, but for someone else, it might be something else. So why can't we just all respect that it's on a spectrum?
True.
Well, that's kind of what I said. Men need femininity as much as we need masculine. it's like what I've learned in my relationship with Lisa, the more I support her, even if I don't want to, I support her anyways. And also talk about the other side as well. We come closer together, and it's like amazing. 5 years later, we can have a conversation that still brings us closer together. Because she allows me to be me, and I allow her to be her. And we both support each other. And that's kind of what I feel a masculine man is. It's not, I expect her to do dishes and cook dinner. It's like, if Lisa cooks dinner, I do the dishes.
So you're talking about being good human beings who
Yes.
work intentionally on communication and your relationship. I think that's beautiful.
Yes. And I think that's when I said the bottom line is to really start looking inward, I think that's the big thing. When we look inward, then we are able to support those that we want to support, our children or spouse or whoever it is, by coming to this place, like you said, Kathryne, of empathy and compassion and having more of those kind of awarenesses. I think in our society today, it seems like overload, whether it's social media or stress about money or whatever it is that compacts, or just our health in general, seems to be compacting our ability to be aware and to support our children growing up. And I know when my son was growing up, it was in 2000, and it was like, well, he's on the computer. Awesome. Look, he's on the computer all this time. He's becoming a great computer little guy. But little did we know what that would mean for long-term development, or, socializing skills, ability to feel confident in self, and all those sort of things. So it's coming back, like we're noticing, and maybe it's because we're at the retirement age as well. So it's coming back to this space of when I, as the individual, start to feel grounded and can de-stress and can take time for me, then I can show up better for my children. And so, in the classroom, I personally have seen many teachers just overwhelmed. It's too much. There are too many needs. And, most teachers that I have met, they love teaching. It's the complexities of the classroom, like, the demands of doing such an amount of additional paperwork for special programs and everything else. So it's that system, and I've probably thought this the last probably 15 years of my teaching, it needs an overhaul. I don't know what that looks like, but it needs an overhaul for sure. Have you thought about that? I know you said you come in as the professional as well, instead of the teacher, but as the professional, principal and that sort of thing. So
I think education is one of the slowest changing systems that we have as a society. There might be others, but that definitely is one. And the benefit of this time of life is that I have seen the pendulum swing several times. It's almost like language now. It's like, and this, you might notice it too, but not living always in an English-speaking country. All of a sudden, I'll be having a professional conversation with somebody and they'll use a term, or I'll see a term, or especially all the stuff with boys right now and the manosphere and the looks maxing and all this stuff. But with education, there's the new words that are coming in, but as soon as someone explains it to me, it's like, oh, well, that's the same thing. It's just got a different word. So the system hasn't really changed. We might be calling it something new, but the system is, when you were talking, one of the things I was thinking of, because the world is changing so quickly. Our son was born in 93, so he was just before the internet and all of that happening. But things are changing so quickly, and truly, you won't be able to prepare your children for the future when it's a future that you don't know and you don't understand and you can't imagine. So just like I think school could do this, I think for families, the only thing that you can control is your family. And really, you can't control the whole family, but you can control what goes on in your family. So if you put the focus on just getting back to putting relationships first, communication first, nature first, the arts first, then those children are going to have a solid foundation. And no matter what the world throws at them, if they know how to self-regulate, if they know how to be resilient, if they have, if they believe in themselves, if they know how to ask people for help, if they know where to go when they're mentally struggling, like, they'll be fine. But if a child has grown up in an environment where you do have extremely busy parents, doing the very best, what they feel is the very best for their children, who have them scheduled 6 days out of 7 to get the extra, to be better, because they can do the water polo, they can go to the French class, they can have an extra math class. So they're completely overscheduled. And those children will grow up in a world where they don't have that foundation, that core that says you can do anything you want to do. Just you have to, believe you can do it.
And that's the challenging part. I think being a parent, it will always be challenging in many ways, because we don't know, like you said, what the future, future brings. And I think, like, I'd love to say, I wish when I was 24, I was more aware and more, capable, I guess, of raising a child better. However, I was not at that time in my life. It was only until I was almost closer to my 50s where it was like, oh, light bulb moments were coming on and going, oh, I need to actually look more inside and grow within, so I can kind of spill over, so I can, either model or support or guide my children better. So it's kind of, it's like one of those things where, yeah, if I had a magic wand, I suppose back then it would have been nice that I would have been able to do that better. However, did the best to my ability. And even being as a teacher, was very aware of what the masses of how children were, coming to school, did they have self-love? Did they look at themselves as leaders of self and all that sort of thing? And so,
final pause. If you've got a message on your heart and want to be our guest, don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. Visit forwardwalkingchoices.com, scroll to the Soulmates and Suitcases podcast section, and click apply here. Now back to the show.
So, yeah, it's an interesting journey, and I totally agree with the whole, helping and supporting boys with the differences boys and girls need to feel successful, to feel worthy of themselves. And it is different. And yeah, that mold of teaching, the teaching setup of a school needs to change. And thank goodness there has been lots of different opportunities or different types of schooling that kids can go to. But yeah, the shifting in our world is really shifting. Let's just say that right now.
Well, the really positive thing is that there is information, like things that I'm constantly amazed at new things that I'm learning. My son just welcomed in a son 3 months ago.
That's congrats. Yeah.
Thank you. And a new project for me. So, but one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I thought, gosh, it's such important information. Why hasn't it been shared more? And it was the fact that, okay, sorry, I'll back up a little bit, because I had a conversation with one of my son's best friends whose son had a son as well in Canada, and he was 6 months old. And this young man was really struggling emotionally. And so he knew what I do, and so he wanted to talk. But as I was talking to him, I told him I had just been kind of doing a bit of a deep dive into testosterone, because I was really thinking this is something I don't understand enough about, and I need to understand more to understand males better. And one of the fascinating things that I found was that when the baby is born, the father's testosterone drops about 30% if he is active in that baby from the beginning. 30%. And like biologically, that makes so much sense, because you want more of the nurturing part of the hormones to kick in. But for a young man who all of a sudden his testosterone drops that dramatically, and he doesn't understand why all of a sudden he is feeling so many more emotions, why he's feeling more vulnerable. And it's just and so when I said that, he was just kind of it was like, oh, I'm not just losing my mind. And it's like, good, how many men have struggled, especially now that young men are becoming more active in fathering. So it's just, that's that awareness and the knowledge part of it. I think if we just keep learning and then sharing, it's going to help people just, be better, feel better, do better.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. I did not know that fact.
And
It's the thing.
And it's the ripple effect, because now that gentleman gets to share it with his buddy when his buddy has kids.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's the cool part.
And
Yeah.
with the son.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's parenting is just such I don't know, it's such a privilege, but it is such a job. It is real relationships, I guess, in general, I would say. They take so much work, and they're so worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And before we're starting to wrap up, but I really want you to share some of the understanding why it's so important between birth and 8 years old. Why is that an important stage in regards to the intentional parenting with boys?
There are so many cultures that have some kind of a traditional phrase about, like in Japan, it's the first 3 years. What you build in the first 3 years will carry you till you're 100. So you're building the foundation. So when you have an awareness right from the beginning of what your child needs to thrive, and you can focus on that, their view of themselves and the world that they're growing up in is going to be totally different than if you're not aware. So having that right from the beginning, that child has a better chance of thriving, especially through education, than merely surviving all the way through.
Perfect. And so is there some understanding that about that, 7 to 8 years old, things have mostly been formed? Is that the right understanding?
Well, there's different stages, but that's the first one. Right around 8, often for boys, my understanding, a little bit at 4 years old, but again at 8 years old, there is more of a hormonal shift or a hormonal surge. And at that time, it can be almost like a step, like they're going from being the young child to just moving into the next stage of development. And it can be a very confusing time for them. Like I remember that being one of the hardest years when our son was 8, just very sensitive and like really deep feelings about things. And it was a really hard year because school was not conducive to building up the opposite of that. So I think those first 8 years is the critical time. It's not, you still have a chance their whole life, but if you can get some of those core foundational, beliefs ingrained, all connected with self-esteem and resiliency and just some of the core values that we want to develop in our children, then things look good.
Yeah.
But I want to say though, I really try to be intentional in not making parents feel guilty for whatever they're doing, because I know I have said and still say, don't blame me for all the mistakes, because I was doing the best I could with what I knew at that time. And that's all anybody can do. And when I know better, I can do better. And that's the bottom line. And it goes both ways.
100%.
Like I tell my son the same thing. If this is the best you can do at the moment, that's it. It doesn't have to be any more. When you can do better, you will do better.
I love that. I like how you're leaving it off. It goes both ways. That's perfect.
Good.
And we're always learning. We're always learning. That's the other
Absolutely.
thing. And so, Kathryne, can you share a little bit about where people can find you, what your book is, and where people can find your book, and as well your podcast? And we didn't talk too much about your Sonhood Coaching. So can you tell us, just wrapping up here, where everyone can find you on those things?
Almost everything is on my website, which is sonhoodcoaching.com, SON. There's a link on that to the book, to any social media. I'm active on most social media, but mostly on LinkedIn and Substack. I have a YouTube channel because of the podcast, and I think that's it. I think any of those places you can get almost everything that I have. And there's a lot of free resources for parents too on the website.
Oh, excellent. And one last question before we let you go. Where did Sonhood come from for Sonhood Coaching?
Well, I was thinking of, childhood, boyhood, manhood, sisterhood. And it was like, no, this started with my son.
I love it. I love it. He's the inspiration.
He is.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Kathryne, for your time. And for those who are listening to our show today, it was very, very informative. And I know many of our audience would have taken away at least a few tips about parenting and how to show up better for our kids. And I think I can hear kids in the background from where you are. It's a wonderful way to stop. Right?
Must be a lunch break here or something.
All good. No, it's a great way to end the show. And for those who are, enjoyed the show today, make sure to leave a comment and thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and turn on those notifications so you can get more of these amazing shows. And if you are looking to find Scott and I or learn more about our books, you also can find us at forwardwalkingchoices.com. So thank you again, Kathryne. Kathryne, I'm going to do it again, Imabayashi.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed speaking with you both.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and your wisdom. Thanks, Kathryne.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
We'll say kapun ka from Thailand.
So, sayonara.
Very good. Thanks.
Looking for more inspiration around healing, love, growth, and possibility? You can explore our books at payhip.com/Lisa Scott Brearley Authors. And if today's episode meant something to you, we'd love for you to follow the podcast, share it with someone you care about, or join our Soulmates and Suitcases community online. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.